All right, hello US history students. If I'm doing everything correctly, you should be watching this video on Monday. It is good to virtually see you all again after I missed the last few days, last week of school. And I wasn't anticipating going 3 more weeks not seeing you in person, but that's what global pandemics can do. It's a strange week for me. I'm actually house sitting and dog sitting for my dad while he and his wife have now fled the country. They are in Mexico for the next few weeks. I don't know if they're trying to escape coronavirus or get coronavirus, but regardless, the past few weeks have been pretty interesting, I think, for all of us. So I want to thank you for last week for hanging in there, as it was our first full week together, that I wasn't even there for the full week, and then cooperating and doing the assignments on Schoology. You guys are awesome. Quickly, I just want to talk to you about how this week is going to work, this e-learning week. If you haven't seen my email, or if you've seen it or you've forgotten, or you just want to hear it verbally, everything will be on Schoology, and there's really just going to be 3 things in each folder for each day. So if you go on Schoology, I've created a whole folder just for this e-learning week. And within that folder, there's a folder for each day of the e-learning week, and within each folder, there's going to be 3 things. First, there's going to be this video that you're going to watch and enjoy and love. Then there's going to be just the PowerPoint, just the Google Slides like I would have on a normal day. That will have our agenda slide, today's question, and things like that. And then there's going to be the actual assignment thing, the thing that you actually have to turn in for e-learning. We need some sort of proof, some sort of evidence that what we're doing is at least somewhat working. So that part, and I will always put on Schoology that part must be filled out and completed and turned in so that you can get the credit for this e-learning week. How this is going to work, my suggestion is, if you've opened this video, then congratulations, you have gone through half the battle. My suggestion is that you have this video maybe opened in one tab, and that you have the Google Slides open in another tab, and then maybe that final sheet open in another tab. Split the screens however it works best for you. But I am going to be referring back. I've got my laptop set up over here, set up with the Google Slides for the day so that I can be on track as well. I am going to ask you to pause the videos at a certain time. If you look further in the Google Slides, I have some videos from YouTube that I'm going to ask you to watch. And kind of brainstorm on that sheet that you've gotten first. So where we left off, I appreciate last week you doing your Rise of Hitler timeline, spending a little time thinking about how to properly cover the rise of Hitler, like journalists at the time, why people were pledging allegiance to the Nazi Party when people knew that they were kind of like they had some problematic views. So I want to, before we jump into the Holocaust, then I want to spend today, Monday, looking back again at the United States and what their response is to all of this. So before the Holocaust really begins, everyone knows the Nazi Party is rising and they are not fans of the Jews. So Jews are escaping. On your timeline in one of them and in one of the videos, the Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, that it was known to Jews, you are not wanted. Jewish businesses were broken into, robbed, damaged, set on fire, and Jews were obviously just like harassed every day in Nazi Germany. So a lot of them, if they had the resources, tried to get out of Germany, because even before the Holocaust began, that wasn't a place that Jews wanted to live. So our question for the day today is, how did the United States respond to the Jewish refugee crisis? And this is in the Google Slides, and it's also at the top of your paper that you will be submitting at the end of today. And this is the real question. So the way that today's today's video is going to be structured is I'm kind of going to make an argument to you. So you'll see at the top of the Google Docs sheet, it has thesis. It's my thesis that I'm going to be presenting to you, and I'm going to give you 2 points of evidence, like 2 body paragraphs. And then the third point of evidence is you're going to do solo, and you're going to fill out the rest of that sheet there. So I'm kind of making like a 3-paragraph essay just in a video to you, in a lesson that I'm making an argument to you, a historical argument about how the United States responded during the Jewish refugee crisis. So let's get started. My thesis is quite bold and quite clear. It's that the United States failed the Jewish population. So you can go ahead and write that on your Google Doc. You just type that in. The United States failed the Jewish population in the 1930s. Also, of course, I have a whiteboard. Because, look at me. I don't have my tie on today, but I have glasses. People think that I'm a mathlete. So of course I have my own whiteboard. Get over it. So I'm barely going to use it. I don't even know why I have this. So here's my thesis statement to you, is that I'm saying the United States failed the Jewish population in the 1930s. Obviously, it's a pretty bold statement, so I better be able to support that with some facts, which you better believe I'm going to. So if you'll look with me, I'm going to change my slide on my laptop here to the third slide that says, the following is a list of the documents required by the United States to obtain a visa. And first, we should define a visa. That's the first question under point 1 on your Google Doc. Point 1 on your Google Doc. What is a visa? And a visa is a legal document for immigration. That's really just the basic understanding that you need to know. So if these German Jews are trying to come to the United States, they needed to have some sort of proper documentation and a visa so that they can come to the United States and stay for whatever period of time. So that's what you need to know for that first question under point 1. What is a visa? A legal document regarding immigration. There's a whole bunch of immigration documents that I'm sure you've heard of, but this is all you need to know. A visa is just one of those documents. And if you'll take a look with me, then the second question, what were some of the documents that were necessary to enter the United States? Well, let's take a look together on that third slide. You can see that there's quite a lot. 5 copies of the visa application, a quota number, proof of permission to leave Germany, proof that the prospective immigrant had booked passage to the Western Hemisphere, physical examination in the United States, an affidavit from a bank regarding your accounts. You could see there's just tons and tons of documents, and that there's some assumptions that are being made by the United States here. I mean, it was not easy for someone, 5 copies of a visa application. They weren't just going to the library and, hopping on a printer. No computers in the 1930s. So they require some sort of money, some sort of financial stability in order for you to get these copies and to have these types of documents. Some of these I think are just very interesting, that they knew that the Jews were being persecuted in Germany. But you need letters from 2 sponsors of the United States that must be citizens and have 6 notarized copy of a sponsorship form. If you're looking with me, that's the 1, 2, 3, the 4th bullet point on that third slide on the Google slides. So you need to know somebody in the United States in order to go to the United States. It doesn't matter if you're being persecuted in Germany. You have to have 2 relatives or friends who live in the United States already who can vouch for you and say, yeah, they're a good guy. They're not going to screw stuff up in the United States. They're good people. So already that, if you don't know people in the United States, you can't come. And then that tricky word there, you have to have 6 notarized copies. Notarized is another legal service that you would have to pay for, that someone has to sign it, and then there has to be a witness to the signing and whatever. So you have to have some sort of established relationship in the United States with friends or family. You have to have some sort of financial stability that you can provide copies and notarization for these documents. And what I think is very interesting is if you look on the right-hand side of the bullet points, the second from the bottom says, proof of permission to leave Germany. Well, think about it. If you're a Jew at the time in Germany, the Nazis obviously don't want you there, but the Jews aren't walking up to the Nazis and be like, please, can we have permission to leave Germany because we're being persecuted? You have to get permission from the people who are going after you because of your religion in order to make it to the United States. I just think that is pretty crazy to think about. So what I'm looking for on your Google Doc, I'm not looking for anything ridiculous. Please do not write down this entire list that's on this slide on that Google Doc. Just some of the documents, maybe some of the ones that I discussed here. Which ones do you think are maybe the most outrageous? Because that's definitely the case that I'm making to you. Is I think that these documents, it's a little bit overbearing. It's a little bit overkill. That you don't need all of these documents, and it's limiting some Jews from coming in. If you don't have that type of money, you couldn't come to the United States because you didn't have those types of resources. How did President Franklin Roosevelt respond when people asked him to make it easier to apply for visas? So this is the third question on your Google Doc under point 1. So this is the story, and it's going to be with one of the videos that you're going to watch soon, that they literally came to the president, Jewish advocacy groups, went to the president and say, hey, we think that it's too hard for Jews to come to America right now, and we think that they need our help. So will you consider easing up some of these restrictions? The problems that I just discussed are the problems that they brought to the president. There's some sort of financial assumptions we're making about Jews, and getting permission from the Nazi Party is obviously somewhat problematic. So they went to the president and said, will you fix these problems? And really all that you need to write down for that problem, for that third question is, President Roosevelt said no. They said, can we make it easier for Jews to come? Can we make this visa application process easier? And he said, no, we're not going to do that. You're going to explore after this video is over maybe why he and other Americans wanted that to be, but that's all that you need to know right now, is that he was asked to make the visa application process easier, and they did research and presented to him and everything, and he said no. So here's my first point to you, is that my thesis is the United States failed the Jewish population in the 1930s. My first point is how? Well, visa applications were very strict and very tough, and they were limiting the amount of Jews that could come to the United States. My second point, then, is the MS St. Louis, which is a not-so-famous case. I think it should be more famous. I didn't learn about it in high school or college. Everything that I know about it, I've taught myself. But basically, it was a group of Jewish refugees, and here's the first question under point 2 on your Google Doc. What is a refugee? I don't know if Ms. Mill has talked with you about this, or if you've heard this term. In the past few years, there was the Syrian refugee crisis. And a refugee is really just a person escaping a country because of persecution, and it could be political persecution. It could be they have, they're economically displaced. It could be, a hurricane has gone through their country and their house was wiped out. They've got no place to live, so they are going to another country then. So that's what you need to know. Refugee is someone going from one country. They're displaced there for some reason, political persecution, economic displacement, the environment, and they're trying to find a new home in another country. That's what you need to know for your first definition there of refugee. So it's a group of Jewish refugees that are hopped on this boat, the MS St. Louis. And the original plan is they're going and they're sailing to Cuba to look for someplace else to live, because they decided they can't live in Germany, and they were lucky enough to have the resources to get on a ship. So they got on a ship and they were trying to go to Cuba, and Cuba turned them away. And then they come to America, and America then refuses them, basically. So there's a group of, we'll watch the video. I don't remember off the top of my head how many Jews were on the ship, but I believe it was over 100, if not way more than that. That they go to Cuba, and then they go to the United States, and they're like, hey, we're fleeing persecution in Germany. Our goal was to go to Cuba and then to come to America eventually. Like, can we just come to you now for a place so that we won't be persecuted? And America said no, and the boat was basically turned back to Europe then. And luckily, these people were able to find homes in, the Netherlands or France or the United Kingdom. But we're talking right now, this is before the outbreak of World War II. So if they found a home in France, they're like, this is, all right, great, I'm out of Germany, I've escaped persecution for right now. And then in just a few months, World War II began. The whole continent of Europe is inflamed in war, and then France is captured by the Nazis, and they're kind of in the same situation that they were before. So here's my second point to you to support my thesis. Visa requirements were very strict. There's my first point. My second point is, when refugees actually came to America and America was confronted with what to do with them, it turned them away. So under my point 2 on your Google Docs right now, you should have what is a refugee answered. And the third question, I've skipped the second one, how did the United States respond to the refugees on the St. Louis? You already know that they were turned away. Pause this video right now, and within the Google Slides, I want you to watch the 2 videos that I have about the MS St. Louis and answer those 2 questions. The first one comes from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, so that helps you answer that second question there. Where does the source come from? And then tell me, is this a reliable source, and how do you know that? I also am going to ask you to watch that video within the Google Slides. Like, don't open it on YouTube, because it's like a 16-minute clip, and on Google Slides I have it trimmed so you're only watching about 6 or so minutes. It's going to recap the story for you about the MS St. Louis much better than I did. It gives you a little bit more information, a little bit more primary sources, so that will be helpful to you. Once you've finished with that video then, go ahead and the next slide, there's just a short 1-minute video, a primary source from the time. It's a news report of an American journalist talking about the MS St. Louis. You're going to notice that his story kind of differs from the story that I just told you and the story that the video is going to tell you. It's kind of going to be celebrating America. So previewing the question there, what does the primary source news clip say about what the United States did with the passengers of the MS St. Louis, and is it consistent with the real story? I think maybe you can tell by my tone and by the way that I answered the question, it's not going to be consistent with the real story. You have to tell me how is it different and maybe why is it different. So pause this video right now and go ahead and watch those two clips that are on the Google slide. Remember, again, don't go out into YouTube, just watch them within the slides because they're trimmed clips, and then answer those questions. So after you've paused this video, you've got those two clips watched, and you should have all of the first side of the Google Doc complete, my point 1 and my point 2. You should have all of those questions answered. Once you're done with all of that, come back and press play on this video. I've got a little bit more for you. All right, hopefully you have watched the videos, or you didn't, and I have no way of checking you on that. But hopefully that you have. I trust you all. And I want to talk then about now about my point 3, my third piece of evidence to support my thesis statement that the United States failed the Jewish population in the 1930s, which are these public opinion polls, which you'll have all of them on your Google slides, so you can take a look at all of those, and I have just a few questions for you about those. What you're going to notice is, so the president, President Roosevelt, when he was asked to make visa restrictions less strict, he said no. And maybe there's a reason for that. I mean, the president is supposed to be representative of the people. I think we can agree on that. So how did the people actually feel? And I want you to pay very close attention. So I kind of ordered them in the Google slides in a way that I think makes logical sense. So if you'll take a look at the first one with me on the Google slide, it's, do Americans approve or disapprove of what the Nazis are doing in Germany? And you can see overwhelmingly Americans disapprove. Cool, we're on the same page. I think we also all disapprove of what Nazis were doing in Germany. Sorry, coronavirus. And then I want you to take a look at the other ones beyond that. It gets into a little bit more detail. So this is the independent work that I'm going to ask you to do for today. I'm going to try to keep this video under 20 minutes. That I know you have a lot of work to do for other classes as well. But if you just watch this video, quickly take a look at those polls, finish this sheet, and then turn in this Google Docs on Schoology, you will be good for today on Monday then. So I want you to take a look at those and think about, right now in the 1930s, what historical event is going on in the United States and around the world? What maybe economically is happening? Hopefully this is ringing bells to you that obviously the United States and the rest of the world is going through the Great Depression. So you could see maybe why Americans would be not so happy about bringing new people into the country, because there's already high competition for jobs. So if you're bringing in more people, then, well, that kind of stinks, because now you're going to have even more people competing for the very limited amount of jobs that there are. And then you're even competing for more resources, too. I'm sure that you saw a picture of the bread lines of all of these people in line because they just couldn't get bread. Well, now you're going to add even more people to that. So there might be economic reasons. I'm making the argument to you, though, to look very closely at the polls, because I think there's something more than an economic reason that those polls reveal. So that's what one of the questions underneath point 3 is asking. How do we know Americans wanted to keep immigrants out for more than just economic reasons? So take a look at that data, and I'm expecting like a few sentences responses on this one, because you're looking at multiple polls and synthesizing all the information together and seeing how Americans actually felt, specifically about Jews. I mean, Americans had opinions about Jews, and that's what it's going to reveal, and maybe they aren't very pretty. When you're finished then with that, I will ask you to take a look then at my favorite poem. I just think that this really gets at the heart of what the problem is with America during this time, and just with us. I couldn't even make the argument today. And it's a poem from a German man who survived through, Nazi Germany. And I'm just going to read it. And if it's on the final slide of the Google Slides if you want to read it along with me. But it's, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. If you're anything like me, I find this poem very short and very powerful. That that you just see how the Nazis were just picking apart at different people, and this idea of you can just stand by and watch, and it's not gonna happen to me. It's not gonna happen to me until eventually it does. And so I just ask you to reflect then. This final question that's on the Google Doc. Do you think the United States deserves to be called a world leader? Because oftentimes when we study World War II, it's the United States emerges as this world leader. You know, they liberate the Holocaust, the concentration camps, and they defeat Hitler and Tojo and Mussolini, and you know, they're viewed as kind of like this savior of the world almost. Do you think that this is a deserved title? Why or why not? And you have a whole series of evidence to base it on. You have today and my thesis, which I think this thesis and today's lesson can be used as good evidence for one side, but you also have all the other evidence that you've done through your notes and through the rest of your studies of World War II. You know, it's perfectly acceptable to say either response. I'm just asking you to cite some evidence with that. If you're feeling like a superstar then, that extension there is, what responsibility do regular people have to take action about everyday injustices? If you want to type out a response to that, I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about that. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I understand that you have a lot of things to do and you're just sitting at home right now and you probably don't want to be thinking about this. But this is why I created this lesson to begin with. I just think that this is very interesting and usable for us. So we're seeing a nation stand by and just watch this happen. And obviously, eventually we do get involved. But what responsibility do we have to stand up for each other when we see things that are doing wrong? That's the big question that I think that today's thing gets at. So that's the end of this video. That's the end of what you have to do for Monday. So to be clear, if you've watched this video and you've followed along with the slides with me and you've watched the videos in the Google Slides, you're awesome. Thank you for sticking it out. I know that this e-learning is going to be weird, and I know that we've only spent 1 week together, and then I was sick for 2 days, and now we have 3 weeks that we're not going to see each other. Like, we're not going to see each other until April now, but hopefully you're sticking with me. So to conclude here, thank you for sticking with me. Make sure that by the end of today you complete this Google Docs and submit it on Schoology. We need some sort of proof that you are actually doing the work. So if you've been working along with me, it should be fairly easy. I'm not looking to make this very complicated on you, but just submit that, and then I think that's everything that I've got for you. Shorten things. I'll try to make tomorrow maybe even a little bit shorter than today's video. I'm looking at, almost 3 minutes here, but hopefully we can make these a little bit quicker so that I don't have too much work for you. And with that, then I will see you guys tomorrow then.